right before you, we have a picture that's really we've been showing pretty regularly for the past 2 years since we started these webinars. And I like to term this the central governing system of the human body. Central governing system of the human body. And basically what is basically trying to portray is that there are three main systems. First of all, the brain and nervous system, the endocrine system, and the immune system. These three systems control the other 12, the 9 systems, making total 12 systems in the human body. And if any of these systems go wrong, and really the goal with health is to ensure that primarily these three systems are taken care of, and we're trying to emphasize what you need to do to do that. But here's the thing up here, the mind and the emotions, how you feel, how you think, your activities, what goes on in your mind. These things have an overwhelming influence on the brain, the endocrine system, the immune system, and the rest of your body cells. So it's of first importance, really, that you understand that how to take care of that aspect. And we've had people like Dr. Bernie Siegel come talk about cancer and how your thoughts and emotions can affect it for better or for worse. We've had Dr. Koenig from Duke University come talk about religion, spirituality, and health, and showing research findings how if you help patients who are sick, help them find their spirituality or help attend to their spiritual needs, they tend to get better. But here's the thing. Many of these approaches are for people who are already sick, who are already having problems. So we also decided, well, we're going to look for people who can also talk about just basically how you can enjoy health and how you can control, I hate to use the word control because some people cannot see it in the negative light, but really that's what we're talking about. Knowing how to reduce stress, knowing how to live and find happiness and joy in your daily life. And we had Mr. Waldman come speak about the spirituality and the brain. And so I think and he gave a lot of research findings on that, but I think what is also extremely, extremely important is knowing how to deal with issues, especially in these times we're living in. As we all know, the last 2009 was a crazy year. And I've had hours of discussions with Coscia, Ken Coscia. I butchered it, and I'm sorry. But we've had several hours of discussion with him, and I am so honored, and Sherry and myself are so honored that he would agree to do a webinar for us, and I'm sure this is not the first, but on what he has devoted his life to. And from our discussions, I know this is a man who deeply loves people and deeply loves to help people. And so without much further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Sherry to make the introduction. Okay.
I'm going to introduce our guest tonight. His name is Ken Coscia, and he is the founder and president of KCTI, an international training and coaching company dedicated to enhancing the quality of people's lives. Ken earned a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration with a focus on managerial psychology and has collaborated with many of the pioneering leaders in the mind and body sciences. He has 38 years of highly respected experience in creating, designing, and delivering personal and professional development programs. He is a passionate, results-oriented training consultant with a broad range of professional skills. He was the contributor to the St. Francis Care Today program with Dr. Ed Johnson on sleep disorders. I thought that was interesting. And Ken also serves as the International Training Director for Silva International, a personal development organization with centers in over 118 countries. Ken lives with his family in Connecticut, here in the United States, and according to our conversations before the webinar, it's been pretty cold there. So I guess I should say let's give him a warm welcome because he's someplace that's so cold. But anyways, Ken, we are very honored, like David said, to have you with us tonight. So Ken, are you there?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, David. And thank you to our fellow listeners who are joining us on the call. It is my honor to be here, and I thank you for honoring me, for allowing me this opportunity to be with you and share some time. As I was listening to you, I became a little bit even more enthused to be here, because we seem to be very much on the same page. Some of the work you've been doing with Dr. Bernie Siegel, Mark Waldman, although they're in the medical field, or shall I say the scientific, I like to think of myself as one who, in these 38 years, has been science-based as much as possible. So to everybody, I want to say welcome to Navigating Uncertainty. And tonight during the webinar, we've got not quite an hour and a half left, I'm going to share with you 2 keys to navigating uncertainty and stay resilient in these challenging times. Plus, as a bonus, if time allows, I want to look at 5 keys to help you begin to turn things around, even to thrive. During this, it's my intention that you'll discover how you can naturally and easily increase your productivity, lower your medical costs by reducing your stress levels, stay focused, positive, motivated, become more creative in your ability to solve problems, and more importantly, begin to overcome limiting belief systems that are preventing you from being your very best. The chart that David was just showing us about the mind, starting with the hypothalamus to the different systems that are important, fits perfectly with the work that I'm interested in. And you can do all of this by simply changing the way you think about things. So tonight I want to point you in the direction and show you how. And I guess what would be best is let's begin with, first of all, I know you know, but let's just ponder a little bit. What do we mean by resilience? Usually when we think of resilience, we think of it as the ability to bounce back, the ability to turn things around. And if you bear with me 1 second, I'm having slight technical, there we go. Let's see if this does it. Difficulty. So again, the ability to bounce back. However, what I also want to suggest to you is not only when we're facing life's challenges or we're a little under the weather or perhaps we're feeling things are not going quite the way we'd like, it can also be resilience, a way to build up our physical and emotional tolerance as a preventative measure. So what I want to suggest is I'd like to explore with you tonight how this trait called resilience can be both remedial and also preventative, which will result in creating a feeling of certainty. And you know, when we say certainty, and it's my hope, my intention, especially in this recent year or two, in the accelerating pace of change, with all the things that have been happening, it seems at times that the world has gone mad. Forgive me if that's not your viewpoint, but when I look at it, I pick up the paper and listen to the media, it's like, whoa. And we see so many different paradigms collapsing, so many institutions that we've taken for granted. All of a sudden, we find ourselves questioning more, maybe even wondering, who can we really trust? And in my opinion, that's very dangerous, because if we begin to lose that sense of hope, if we begin to lose that sense of confidence or trust even, then what usually happens is people take an attitude of, why bother? We're all going to die anyway, and then we give up. We don't even make an effort. So let's take a look at what I'm going to choose to call a certainty model for tonight. And as you look on your screen, and on the top we talk about human potential. We know that we have unlimited human potential. We're really still in our infancy. Not too long ago, a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of being on one of your webinars with you, listening to Mark Waldman, who I've become friendly with. He and I met in Austin, Texas at a conference that I was Master of Ceremonies, and he's one of the guest speakers, and I had the wonderful opportunity to take care of him, show him around, and get to know him and his work better, he and Dr. Andrew Newberg. And we know that in studying the brain, we're really still in our infancy. It just, you know, science is still, it seems like every year we learn something more and recognize how little we do. So let's keep it simple. And if you'll bear with me, and I ask you for your patience, and I thank you for that, I'm going to simplify things that can be rather complex. So I don't pretend to be a scientist. I don't pretend to be a physician. I pretend to be someone who's been a student for nearly 40 years and a practitioner of various different modalities in a very practical way. So we know that when we take action, when we apply our skills, when we take our capabilities and we take action, we get results. Sometimes we like the results, sometimes we don't, but whatever those results are, or results we don't get, that will foster a belief system, a level of confidence in what we think we can do. So by belief we mean a statement that each of us holds to be true about ourselves. It could be about another person. It could be about an organization, a belief. And what's really fascinating, the slide that David showed us earlier as he was getting ready to introduce me, he and Sherry, and he talked about the hypothalamus. What's fascinating is neuroscientists know and understand that if we hold a thought long enough, if we think of something and repeat it with intensity, eventually we begin to believe it, even though there may be no scientific basis to it, even though it may not be true for anyone else. And usually we know in our culture this to be the kind of stuff that fosters superstitions. It can really be our best friend or our worst enemy. The same holds true with our human potential. When we apply ourselves and we take action and we get results, we say yes, and we begin to feel a feeling of certainty. So usually as we begin with small successes, they lead us to bigger ones. My question, though, keeping in mind our topic tonight, because we could go in a lot of directions, how in the world to produce certainty when the world doesn't give it? How do you produce this feeling of certainty, which is so important and relates directly to being resilient, when the world doesn't seem to give it to us? And by certainty, when we start losing that and we feel uncertainty, it's a feeling of what will happen next. So to answer this, first we need to look at the process of change. Because it's really about managing change and the process. And for tonight's discussion and our time together, I'd like to take a look at 3 stages. Again, this is me simplifying from a body of knowledge, from a psychological point of view, from a human potential point of view. We can even look at it from the neuroscientific point of view. So this is, again, me asking you for permission to practicalize it. So first we have what might be called endings. And an ending usually implies the loss of something, giving up something. It could be the loss of what's left behind. Something ceases to be. And usually, typically, it's viewed as either a loss or a gain, whether it be a position, responsibility, a job function, a loss of people, friends. I know I'm speaking for myself and my family. Just in these past 2 months, I've had several, literally several close, very dear friends pass away. I've had several close, dear friends who have close friends who have or have turned seriously ill. So there's a lot of ways you can look at it from a personal, in your relationships, in your business, in your career, in a turning point in your life, in a defining moment. It could even be a loss of expertise. So usually we understand this intellectually, but we don't accept it emotionally. And endings are characterized by reluctance to let go of the old ways. The second stage would be transitions. And transitions are the time of weaning people from the old to the new. Transitions are the period of movement from what was to what will be. Again, keeping in mind there's still a perception of losses. Transitions can be difficult if people view what they are moving from as preferable to where they are moving to. So what happens is, oftentimes people get stuck in transition if they view the recent endings as a loss. People may not move through the transitions quickly, or there's a reluctance, again, a lack of readiness. The key is to help people, to help ourselves, make the link between the old and the new. And then third, beginnings. Ideally, this is again theoretical model. When we move through that transition, we have a new beginning. Lately, we hear people referring to this as reinventing yourself. It's interesting. Perhaps one of the positives that's come out of the recent job losses, bankruptcies, changes in people's lives is, and perhaps you too have met, or perhaps you're one of those people who are here saying, you know, I wasn't really happy with that anyway. I hated it, or I didn't like it, and now for the first time I'm free to do what I love, to do what I've always wanted to do. The other thing about reinvention or beginnings, it's a time of reevaluating our core values. And it's interesting, I associate someone who I'm friendly with who does work with spirituality in the workplace. I was reading her newsletter today, and she was citing some statements from, of all people, Walmart, and how they've been looking at their customer base and at management and noticing that customers, even in the environment, people are really questioning where they spend their money, and they're really taking a closer look, so they say, at their core values, and is it consistent with that? So beginnings do not occur unless the individual, unless we're aligned with a sense of vision and purpose with that. And ideally, the vision is really, or excuse me, the beginnings is what it's about. So people have to embrace the change before the beginnings can occur. Now, I say this because oftentimes beginnings are the attitudes and behaviors that put startings into motion, and oftentimes people confuse beginnings, a true new beginning, a reinvention, with a startup. The startup is usually the idea, the recommendation, the suggestion, the tasks we realize or the activities we realize we need to do, the resources we're beginning to gather. The challenge is, if we're truly to bounce back and stay resilient, then we need to, obviously we need to move on into a true new beginning, whereas it's typical for people to get stuck. The reason being as we get stuck in these stages is because, first, there's aftershock. Whenever there's an ending, or there's a feeling of loss or a change, typically the first thing is what they call aftershock. And usually this is where we get stuck. And it's usually characterized by a lack of confidence. And this lack of confidence or uncertainty is what keeps us stuck, keeps us holding on to the old, keeps us resisting the change or resisting what it's going to take to make that change. Usually, psychologists think of aftershock as a disturbance that jars the mind or emotions or jars our mental faculties in such a way. And some of the characteristics are uncertainty, a lack of confidence in knowing what's going to follow, and feeling hesitant. I heard someone make an interesting point about with the present economic situation and with the collapsing of some of the financial systems. And the person, very astute person and very knowledgeable, said, but where's the money? Where did it go? I mean, it just didn't disappear. And one of the points that was made that gave me pause was he suggested people have stopped spending. I know an individual who is an associate and also someone I'm friendly with, who works with, who organizes investors with some called guardian angels, who capitalize ideas and innovations. And he usually hobnobs with people who are very well-to-do and have it. And he said, God, it's like someone just pulled the plug out. And they're telling me, I don't know if the next shoe is going to drop or what's going to happen. I've got to hold on to what I have just in case. So although you don't need to be in business, if you even look at it on a personal level, spiritually, in our relationships, when we feel a degree of uncertainty, it can lead to a feeling of mistrust, whether it be another person, an institution, a teacher. And that can also lead, these are the symptoms, three most common symptoms of when one is experiencing aftershock, a sense of self-preservation, which is, of course, fear or fear-based. Now, nothing wrong, and I mean no disrespect. We all need a degree of self-preservation. The challenge is when it becomes the dominant theme and we become self-absorbed, we become greedy, it becomes all about us, And if I may dare to give an example, it's kind of a personal peeve I have, driving. Driving these days, whether you're driving in Hartford, Connecticut, Boston, New York City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Paris, take your pick, it's really wild. I mean, you could be doing 5 miles over the speed limit, even 10, and it's as if you're crawling. People are driving on the right, they're driving on the left. There seems to be an increasingly higher and higher degree of what I perceive as lawlessness and recklessness for that. Driving on a main road. We happen to live on a main road, and then we're set back, and it's almost as if, God forbid, you slow down to make a proper left turn into your driveway without crashing into a tree. People are right on your tail. They're honking the horn for that. And what I invite you is to take a look in your own community, in your own life, and look to see, and I'm sure you know what I'm referring to. In fact, you may even have some dear friends or people you know who, when you think about it, they seem to be very self-absorbed. It's always about them. And the danger with that is when we get stuck in fear, when we get stuck in this mode, innovation won't happen, no progress is made, we just literally get stuck. And if we're truly to grow, if we're truly to innovate, if we are truly going to come up with some solutions to some of these challenges we face in the world, let alone our own nation, the U.S., then we need to really start thinking more and more of the greater good. I don't mean to sound so altruistic, but I guess that's why I do the work that I do. But truly, when we see our politicians spending more time being concerned about making someone right or wrong, setting themselves up to be reelected, rather than taking all that time and energy. I mean, just turn on the news. If we could take that time and energy that we see being spent to attack toward thinking, toward collaborating about ideas and putting our minds and hearts and intellect together. So forgive me, I don't mean to sound like I'm going off on a soapbox with that. But the point is, this is a danger point. So when we look at this, let's look at the new beginnings and this idea of the aftershock. And one of the things is, I think we all agree, in life there's an expression, in life blank, it happens. I'm not going to repeat it, but in life there are trigger events. There are things that invariably happen. Some of them are within our control, some of them are not. We all experience, even the most fortunate of men and women, even people who are good Christians, good Jews, good Muslims, good whoever, whatever, and they do all the right things and they're caring. Even these people will have trigger events, things that invariably happen. Again, some of them are within our control, and many of them are not. So on the screen, if we look at it, the term I'll use, and I'll let you put in your own term there, in life, stuff happens. So in the interest of moving into a phase of practical, making this a little more practical, my hope is that as a result of this webinar, I've pointed you in a direction, that I've ideally inspired you to take some action. And this is a process. This is not something that happens instantaneously. This is something that takes time. It's well worth the investment of the time. However, let's take a look at 4 steps. The first would be the life event. And yet when we look at this, if you read someone like Dr. Martin Seligman in Learned Optimism, he's been very instrumental in doing a lot of work with understanding how so much of optimism or pessimism, these viewpoints, are learned. He feels that they are learned, much like when we look at that certainty model. And we talk about our potential, we apply action, we get results, and those results will reinforce a belief system and attitude. And when we look at these life events, our attitude is the sole determining factor of whether it becomes a problem, an opportunity for growth. So the second part of this formula would be what in psychology we call the point of power, the interpretation, the judgment, and or the value we place on that life event. I can still hear my mother's voice in my head saying, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. And it's interesting, these sayings, these cliches that we look back in our culture often have a basis to them, don't they? And before I go farther with this, we look at this. This is, I want to just say, is the single most important phase. This is the deciding factor. This is the defining moment in your life, whether it becomes something we create an opportunity and flourish with and turn things around and thrive, or whether we just go down the tubes and things get even worse than they were, the interpretation. And the reason being for that is we all have filters, so to speak, ways of looking at things in the interpretation. For example, I live in the Northeast, and we're known for having a lot of snow. It's the funniest thing. We're watching the news, and the news is blasting us with big storm coming, moving over the Midwest, coming to the Northeast, could get anywhere from 6, 12, maybe even blizzard-like conditions. Well, for the school children of all ages, they're jumping up and down, especially in the younger ages. Yes, that means no school tomorrow. Their interpretation of that life event is, yes, time off, sleep in, play some video games. For the guys and gals who are perhaps running a plowing service, I'm flanked by a number of small farms, and one of the farmers, he told me, he says, I make no money as a farmer these days. I make more money plowing the snow. So, you know, when the storms are coming, he's jumping up and down. Yes, it means he's going to increase some revenue, some income, even though it's going to be a lot of hard work and long hours. For the doctor, for the OR surgeon, for the emergency room surgeon, for someone who's got to be in the hospital, for them it means, doesn't matter, storm or no storm, they've got to somehow, some way, whether it takes them 10 extra hours, they need to get there, they need to be there. So again, our interpretation, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just the way it is. What's fascinating to me, though, in all these years, is that although we may not be able to change the life event, our value we place on it, the way we view it, can really make or break us. I say that because that interpretation contributes to an attitude. And I know we've all been hearing about, be positive. Actually, when I first started in 1971, the big thing was think positive. And I'm here to say that that's wonderful. However, what's really better is to be positive, to act positively. Well, when we look at this interpretation, an optimist, if we compare an optimistic viewpoint to a pessimistic, and I'd ask you right now, think in your own life, if you were to win the lottery for any amount, or some good fortune comes your way, an inheritance, God knows what. If we're in a pessimistic viewpoint, we might, knock on wood, oh, wow, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to jinx it. Where the optimist would say something different. That's me, I'm a lucky person. So we know we're being pessimistic when we look at good fortune, success, as being temporary. Whereas when we're optimistic, we think of it as an ongoing condition. Not that we're perfect, it's just something we expect. When we're pessimistic, we tend to internalize things. We take things personally. Nobody loves me. The phones are ringing. Nobody sent me enough Christmas cards. Where the optimist maintains their control. And this is the one thing. I know that this has been labeled a soft skill, and in my opinion, I would challenge any scientist to really demonstrate that that it is a soft skill, because if you think of that in life, in any arena, this is a deciding factor in people's lives. This skill of being able to look at that, because that viewpoint, that attitude, can cause us to feel hopeful or helpless. And helplessness has become a serious problem in America. I don't know about the rest of the world, I know in Europe somewhat. The prescription medication for antidepressants, I hear the figures are climbing. It's become a serious concern. It's the precursor. Helplessness and hopelessness can be a precursor to depression, clinical depression, and a precursor to suicide or serious maladies happening. So in my opinion, my experience, if we lose hope, we lose everything. Hope is what keeps us going. Hope is what, the possibility of something more, that if I take some time, if I make that call, if I apply myself, if I take this time, something good will come of it. That attitude of whether we're passive. When we're passive, we sit back, we blame the world, we play victim, we victimize ourselves. It's never my fault, it's yours. We blame our mother, we blame our teachers. Where when we're active or proactive, we take responsibility. We're accountable. Hey, folks, think about it. I'm not mentioning names. Wouldn't it be great? Just turn on the news. If some of these discussions go on, if these people were concerned, would be accountable for their actions and stop pointing the finger or stop blaming. I think we'd have a lot of solutions. A lot of things would start to turn around even faster. The next step, of course, would be the behavior, the action we take or don't take. So what I'm saying is the viewpoint we have, the attitude, the judgment, will influence an attitude. And if that attitude is pessimistic, helpless, we become passive, we victimize ourselves, we say, why bother? Don't make a difference anyway, and we give up. Whereas if we remain hopeful, optimistic, and I don't mean airy-fairy, I mean get some skills, get some lessons, seek help, develop resources. Even that's an action because we're taking action. We're considering that it's possible. I can work this out. I can turn it around. That behavior. In fact, it reminds me of a story. An easy way to look at this and understand, because I really want to spend a little bit of time, extra time with this point. It reminds me of three men on vacation. Once a year they meet up. They live in different parts of the U.S. One's a minister, one's an archaeologist, and the third is a cowboy. And once a year they get together and they pick a place somewhere in the U.S. of A. to go and spend their time together. This year it's the Grand Canyon. And they're in their rental vehicle. They land at the airport, they get their rental vehicle, they drive to the canyon, they get to one of those view sites. Have you been there? It's quite an amazing sight to behold. Well, the first one out of the car is the priest or the minister. He runs can hardly wait. He looks into the view area. He yells to his buddies, come on, guys. What's taking you so long? You got to see this. This is one of God's greatest creations. Well, they're futzing around in the car. The second man to jump out and join him is the archaeologist. He rushes over, joins the minister, looks into the canyon. Oh, he says, oh, my God, you're right. You weren't exaggerating. This is quite a sight to behold. Truly, one of nature's greatest wonders. Well, finally, the third, our cowboy friend, comes walking over. He joins him, looks into the canyon, says, whoa, guys, I see what you mean. That's one heck of a place to lose a cow. Thank you, David, for that. The one thing I have to tell you, folks, that I've been doing quite a few teleconferences, and this is actually my first webinar with this technology, and I'm still getting used to not being able to see people's faces and have that contact. I mean, I've been in groups of one-on-one, groups of 10, to groups as many as 1,000. My largest group was 1,050-something, almost 1,100 people, and oftentimes hundreds, and it's wonderful. I hope one day we can meet. I mean, that's really what my thing is. I do seminars, I do programs, organizations hire me, wellness centers bring me in, I do work. In fact, I'm going to a rehab center this weekend to do a program. But anyway, so thank you, David, for that little aside.
Sure thing.
So if you look at this interpretation, this judgment, let's just go a little bit more on this, because I really want to, these filters. In fact, by the way, if Mark Waldman were here on the call, he would agree. We know in the brain, neuroscience teaches us the brain does filter out. And the thalamus, if we think about something long enough, hard enough, and repeat it often enough, eventually it becomes true. And one thing you can, a little experiment, and I wish I could see your faces, folks, is if you've ever done this, imagine you're about to have a nice, tall, refreshing drink. Tea, something like that. And usually I know when I'm in Texas, in the warmer climates, it seems to be a favorite beverage. And usually there's lemon in it. What I'd like you to do is imagine taking a piece of lemon out. That's it. Take it out of the tea and hold it as if you're holding your hands. And just humor me. Just play along and put it in your mouth. Everybody just, that's it. Move your hands like you're putting it into your mouth and suck on the lemon. Chew it. And if you could see your face in a mirror, you'd see all that bright yellow. And I'm going to guess that quite a few of our listeners are salivating, maybe getting pucker, possibly even smelt the lemon. I mean, on one level, it almost seems, weird. There's nothing, at least not in my room here, that remotely looks like a lemon. And yet every time just thinking that. So there's two possibilities. One is, if you've ever had that happen to you before, you have at a cellular level a memory of that. And just thinking, your thought, your perception, which is what interpretation is all about, is the key to unlock that memory, and your physiology changes as if you actually were eating the lemon. You know you're not eating a lemon. It's clear that you're making believe. But from a, so to speak, programming point of view, the brain takes it as reality. And that, my understanding, is primarily activity taking place in the thalamus. Think about it. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy, and why it's called the point of power, and why I'm saying this is a necessary skill in business, in medicine, in dealing with people, in relationships, in just getting through life these days. That interpretation, the value we place on it, and of course, the judgment. Another point, a couple of other things when we look at this and the value. Again, the weatherman's reporting snowy conditions, blizzard-like conditions. Have you ever noticed? Have you ever gone out to the supermarket? On the day of those announcements, the supermarkets are what? They're packed. And I'm sure the owner is jumping for joy. In fact, it's often they run out of milk, they run out of eggs, they run out of the basics. Because people are what? Stocking up just in case. And the point I want to make here is I think it's wise, because what if we did get snowed in? I understand that. However, you can see how sometimes we misinterpret. Sometimes our perception is such that we, shall I say, overreact, and we go into fear. Again, self-preservation, because that blizzard is a life event. It can create aftershock. It can create a sense of overwhelm. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to guess that if you're anything like myself, if we go into fear, we don't think clearly. When people go into fear, they don't act the way they typically would. There's a saying, desperate people will do desperate things. Good people, good-hearted people. Look what's happening in Haiti. I was amazed, and I feel so blessed and fortunate to have never had to experience all of the devastation in people's lives. And here are doctors who are devoted to saving lives, who are volunteering their time. They've come in from another country. They've put themselves at risk, and they're getting mugged on the way to help people. And not because, I don't know all the conditions, I'm going to guess very likely not because a person is a bad person, but because they're in such fear for their life, for their children, and they're so desperate that the only thing on their mind is survival, and primitive brain will take over. And again, I'm sure Dr. Newberg and Mark Waldman would agree with that. And when that happens, that's how we get stuck. And when reinvention doesn't take place, if you put it in terms of like society or innovations or paradigm shifts that are necessary in our culture for that. So I want you to do, I'm going to put something on the screen. And that being said, I just want to give you one example. I'm going to ask everybody to look at the screen very closely, look at the photo, and this is just one example. When I found this somewhere on the internet, I said, wow, this reminds me of somebody I met who said Sunday night, and I've heard this a lot from people, is one of the toughest days of the week because the angst they feel about going back to work Monday. And especially if they don't love their work, especially if they're not in alignment with the sense of a vision or sense of purpose with their work. I said, so blessed that I found something as young as I did. And for those of you wondering my age, I started when I was 20. I just turned 58 with that. And this is what this person said going to work was like. This is what he's thinking, imagining, even having dreams. How would you like to be that person coming in without complete control on a parachute? It's got a few holes in it so you can't even steer the sucker. And look what's waiting on the shore for you.
Are those crocodiles?
Yeah, crocodiles or I think those are alligators because they're pointed. Either or, though, there must be a couple of hundred of them there.
Oh, boy. Oh, my goodness.
Quite a viewpoint. Can you imagine what that person's night must be like? It's no wonder this person's having trouble sleeping. In my introduction, they mentioned I'm not considered a sleep expert, by the way. I happen to be, like I said, a student, a practitioner who has developed in various modalities, relaxation techniques that have helped people sleep better and overcome things like insomnia, very skills-based. And I was on that television show with Dr. Ed Johnson in the Hartford, Connecticut area for St. Francis Hospital, which is also has been one of my clients in their wellness centers, designing programs for them. It was almost a little bit embarrassing because he didn't do his homework, and he didn't realize something. He had psychiatrists, he had researchers, he had biofeedback experts, and they were talking clinically and about hard research. And I was the last one, which is perfect actually. And I was all about, let's not talk about this anymore. Here are some techniques. Here are some tools. Here are some resources you can use to start correcting it. And it was okay, by the way, and he was fine. But I could see on his face that he hadn't done his homework and didn't realize, because it was a research-based show, and they weren't really looking to offer suggestions. And there I was offering, for my segment, suggestions. So again, our attitude, that interpretation leads to the behavior, which can be a determining factor for us. So when you change your point of view, you change your life. When you change your point of view, you can change your life. Now again, remember, we need to take action, massive action. We need resources. We need to be educated. Yes, yes, yes. We need to collaborate. We need to have a team. Yes, yes. All I'm saying here is that point of view, that attitude, will determine whether we even take the action, whether we even make an effort or not. And I can also show you that if you look in the area of sports psychology and mental rehearsal, it's become very common. I've been basically, in fact, an associate of mine who's the director for the Silver program in Poland used to be the Canadian fencing team coach, and he took them to 2 Olympics. And he talks a lot about mental rehearsal. One of the silver instructors in North Carolina, Jesse Bowen, was an Olympic champion. Well, he didn't win a gold, but he was there at the Olympics. He's won many world titles, though. He's been, with that by using visualization, imagination. So my question is, if you think about our current situation now in America, would you like to be in recession or transition? There is a growing body of knowledge, a growing body of business leaders who are suggesting that we have many new emerging technologies, many new emerging markets, many new emerging ideas, especially in the technology sector, in the environmental sector, in the sustainability sector, excuse me, for that. If you're in business, if you're a salesperson, do you feel it's really competitive out there, or is it just crowded? I can tell you, even in the field of personal development or teaching self-reliance, which is what I'd like to focus on, it's very crowded. Is your attitude, I can't, I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't have enough education, I could never do that, why bother? Or are you in the mode of learning? Can you consider that this is something you could learn to do? So just some food for thought with that. So let me just summarize a little bit, and then we're going to move into those keys, as I've promised to practice this. Oh, I'm sorry, one more. Are you tired or need? In fact, interesting, it slipped my mind because I hear this too often. I'm so tired, I'm so tired, I'm so tired. You ever notice those are the very people always tired. They always focus on it. Similarly to people, oh, it's so cold, and they talk about the weather. And then it's too hot, and then it's like it's never enough. Yes, there are times when it's very cold, and yes, there are times when it's very warm, no doubt. Can you see, though, how when we give something attention, we give it energy. And when we give something energy, it builds. It magnifies. So, yes, I need a rest. And one of the things, I know in the Silver Program we do our seminars, we call it mental house cleaning, or personally I like to call it powerful communications. And it's about managing our inner dialogue. Because our inner dialogue is very symptomatic, very revealing of how we really feel, what our belief is about life, about something, an endeavor we're looking at, a situation we're involved in, or that. So I would like to invite you, one thing is to start looking at your inner dialogue. And when you are facing adversity or a challenge or a setback, it happens. Be careful not to give it too much energy. Acknowledge it. Take responsibility. Ask questions. What can I learn from it? How can I turn this around? And then move on from there. It's time to let it go and move on and start considering, okay, now what action steps can I take? And that's the point. So it's not just, change your thoughts and the world changes. It's that when we change our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors change. And when our actions and our behaviors change, we set the wheels of progress in motion. And that's really the perhaps more accurate understanding of I don't want to call it phenomena, but this process. So the risk of aftershock, and I offer this in summary for this, is one of the risks is we get overwhelmed. That's a term I sometimes collaborate with psychotherapists or psychologists, and it's a term more than 10 years ago that I was alerted to, and interesting enough, I hear it more and more coming up in our culture. People are feeling overwhelmed. You hear people in business saying, they cut my pay, they cut my bonuses, I'm working longer, harder hours, being paid less, and they're demanding more. You hear small business owners say, our customers want more and more and more for less. They're becoming more and more demanding. You hear people sometimes in relationships say, it's never enough. No matter how much I give and I give, and you don't ever seem to be happy or satisfied. This is a danger point because overwhelm invariably can cause us to shut down. And when we shut down, we get stuck. We get needy. We get self-absorbed in that feeling. And in fact, if you haven't read Waldman's book and Dr. Newberg's How God Changes Your Brain, great read, or Born to Believe, excellent. More technical, probably even better because it's more technical and has a lot more information. But either one of them will explain to you, and they've done with modern imaging, brain imaging techniques. It's Dr. Newberg is a specialist. He looks at thousands of them. This is what he does. And they've actually been able to notice, monitor distinctive differences when one focuses on a word or an attitude, whether it be positive or negative. So I'll just say, this is me oversimplifying it, there can be a complex cascading of chemical changes in the body. When we're feeling like this, cortisol levels will increase, which is not good for the immune system. I know we're concerned about health and well-being. When we get overwhelmed, needy, self-absorbed, we're more likely to come down with a cold or a virus. The key is keeping the immune system. It's our first line of defense, keeping that immune system balanced and strong. And when we get overwhelmed, even hormones change. Even neuropeptides changes. Serotonin levels will get depleted, dopamine levels. And those are two that are important because they help us to feel good. These neuropeptides are the chemical messengers of the body. I use the term, one of the risks of aftershock is we're repelling or pushing away. And that's another topic in and of itself. So I'll just say this, is that if you think of someone you know, even if it's someone you care deeply about, if they're in a temporary state of neediness and they're visiting you, not just a visit, but maybe a weekend, as much as you love that person, when they leave, I'm going to guess you feel relieved. Not because you don't care, but because we don't realize it. If you've ever been with somebody who's very needy, they're kind of down and despondent, and we're feeling okay. But then when we're done 5-10 minutes later, we walk away feeling exhausted, and they seem to feel better. And there's a way to explain that in terms of what's going on in the physiology with that. So we need to be careful. In fact, here's an example, practical. Have you ever awakened in the morning only to find yourself worrying about the day, how busy it is, your schedule is intense, so much to do, and what happens? If you spend 1-2 minutes, I'll give you 2 minutes, usually you feel exhausted, you feel tired, you need a nap, you haven't done anything. It's not so much the doing of things that wears us out prematurely, it's the excessive thinking, it's misdirected attention, and it causes us to get out of alignment, psychologically and physically. Chiropractors have done quite an amazing bit of work here in this area, body workers, and helping us understand how our emotions affect our physiology. And if you read someone like Dr. John Sarno, Healing Back Pain, and you read specialists like that who have devoted their lifetimes to understanding how things like anger, repressed emotions, and these repressed emotions usually are part of aftershock. We feel helpless, we feel hopeless, nobody loves me, can't trust anybody, where am I going to turn, what am I going to do, and we get overwhelmed with that. And what that does is, if we don't find some sort of safety valve to release that, to let go of it, may not change what's actually happening physically, but if we contain it, if we repress it or suppress it, I'll say, it can cause the back, it can cause the neck, it can cause our whole structure to get out of alignment. I mean, again, it's a topic in and of itself. And, of course, in terms of personal growth or business or relationship, we get stuck. We make no progress. We cease to grow. So our key then is, how does one remain calm when you're feeling overwhelmed? And I'd like you to look closely at this next slide. How can we bounce back from these feelings of helplessness and hopelessness and remain calm even when it seems hopeless? How'd you like to be that donkey? And if you look closely at that, I mean, sometimes that's what the feeling can be like for that. So let's take a look at that. And a subtitle maybe, I said how to stay resilient, how to bounce back, and maybe even thrive as a result. So staying resilient. Let's get ready and let's look at some things of getting unstuck. It's another way of saying releasing that which no longer serves us, worn-out ideas, worn-out attitudes, maybe even worn-out clothing that we just won't let go of. And I'd invite you to consider that when we hold on and hold on and hold on, even though it serves no value, no purpose, it's an emotion. Because remember that we have endings, transitions, and beginnings, and the endings or the letting go, sometimes we interpret as a loss. We have attachments to it. If you want to have fun, take a look in your closet. It's funny. In fact, over the holidays, my 17, soon-to-be 18-year-old daughter invited herself into my armoire and into the closet, and her and my wife, between the two of them, it's amazing how much stuff that they took that was perfectly fine, and we didn't throw it away, we donated it, gave it to as a cause, and I wasn't wearing it and hadn't worn them for 10 years. Another term, heart coherence. I'm going to ask you, I'll just look a little bit at this. I understand you either had a webinar or will soon have one with Howard Martin. David, is that correct?
No, but we had one up on heart math.
On heart math.
Yes.
Well, the Institute of Heart Math has been they've been around for a long time. They're in Northern California. They've been doing research in this area. And they're one of the organizations behind the Global Coherence Initiative, which way back when I became a member, I think that they're doing some really good stuff. I mean, their hearts are in the right place. But what I find fascinating, just briefly now, guys, again, because you'll enjoy them because they've got the technology and the understanding. But they've developed this technology where they have actually been able to, with these, they call them magnometers, they can actually measure the heart's patterns, what they call coherent patterns. And they've actually been able to, and I know if you look at the work of The Heart's Code by Dr. Paul Pearsall, he's a cardiologist, by the way. He's a heart transplant specialist. Wrote the book maybe 10 years. This is a topic I've been talking about for about 15 years, but with different language. And so it's great now to hear some of the researchers coming out and clarifying. And we know that there are actual neural cells in the heart, or receptors in the heart. And with heart coherence, long story short, is that it's an alignment, a synchronization of the feelings of the heart with the brain and the nervous system. And the point being is when we are in alignment like that, it's good for our health, it's good for our well-being, it's good for our emotions, it's good for our sanity, and it goes on. So how do we then create certainty? And I want to come back to the heart coherence. So may I say this is a skill and a process. I feel a responsibility to suggest to you that this is not a quick fix. My work is conducting training, seminars, and I sincerely hope that I've been clear with people that it works, it's amazing, if you'll invest a little bit of time and practice, a little bit of study. It's not enough. I find too many people, they go to seminars and do nothing with it. They buy all these CD programs and do nothing with it. It's not so much what we know intellectually that makes the difference. When I hear people say, oh, yeah, been there, done that. I remember I was giving a presentation at one of the universities in Connecticut, and the dean and his wife were very polite, and they thanked me profusely for helping the students because I teach them accelerated learning techniques. And then we were talking about self-reliance and self-improvement, and they whispered to me, but we really don't need this. I said, what do you mean? Well, they were psychologists, and they had all sorts of PhDs, and I don't. I only have a bachelor's. And then later, someone confided privately with me that both of them have trouble sleeping. So the wife suffers from migraines. He has ulcers, all of which are directly related to stress. It's been very well documented. Some argue 70, some argue 90% of our illnesses are exacerbated by stress. And that many of the health problems that emerge in our lives are exacerbated or are triggered because of stress building up. So this is what I mean, is that it's doing with taking what you know and applying it. So you got to have a clear vision and intent. And as I think now, it would have been helpful perhaps to ask everybody, what was your vision or your intention coming to this seminar? Why did you want to be a part of it? What was it that interested you? So one of the techniques, in fact, I want to add this, is and it relates to heart coherence, is building with a resource state, an inner resource state, or what I like to call moments of excellence. I've authored a number of programs. Although I'm not an author of a book, I've authored a number of personal development programs that are available on CD. I just finished a project with Laura Silva with the Silva program on intuition called the Silva Intuition System. So we have a lot of fun there. And this is a term I like to use in that if you think in your life, professionally, personally, or your health, or how about your relationship with a loved one or your spouse? Hopefully you have many, 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 many areas of your life that are important to you where you have moments of excellence, times when you've been at your best. Your health was great. You felt vital energy. You got up easily in the morning. You were moving quickly and easily, nice and flexible, no complaints, feeling those vital juices running. We've all had those moments, and we've had just the opposite. In our respective careers, we've had moments when we've been at our best, where it seemed like we could do no wrong. In our relationships with a loved one, there are times when we're just such harmony, such great feelings between us. And of course, there perhaps have been times when maybe not so. Call that a moment of excellence. And the significance of that is, folks, if you take this with you, before I even go to these other two pieces, if you just take this with you and play with it, it's just an amazing technique. I get more feedback on this. I spend time in all the programs with them with people for 3 hours or 2 days in bringing this in. Because what it is when we're facing adversity and we're not feeling certain, we're lacking confidence, we're not sure what to expect, when we can search in our memory and recall a time, a day, a week, a month, a year, even 20 years ago, when it was better, when it was, doesn't have to be perfect, but it was better, maybe significantly better. That is valid. That is real. That is evidence to support the fact, hey, I've been through this. In fact, in these nearly 40 years that I've been in business for myself, so to speak, since I don't work for them, I'm self-employed. I have client companies, so I guess I work for them. I've been through, I think, 2, if not 3 recessions. And going through this one, it's been helpful to look back and say, okay, have there been times before when you've experienced something like this? Yes. And did you get through it? Yes. And did everything turn out okay? Yes. In fact, it turned out even better than it was before because I learned so much from it. That builds certainty. That's reassuring. So again, I'm not talking airy-fairy, make something up. A moment of excellence is an actual experience you have had. If you're an artist, a writer, and you're feeling stuck, think of a time when you were flowing. It just seemed automatic, and you're in that moment of creativity. And you want to reflect on it. Do it with your eyes closed. Do it in your prayer. Do it if you're a meditator in your meditation. Do it as you're sitting here listening with me. It's a great way to begin the day. I recommend you begin the day. It's a way to center yourself in a feeling of excellence, and you bring that feeling with you. If you're a public speaker, if you're, take any situation, and you're feeling challenged by the new situation, and you're feeling a little bit doubtful, think back to a similar situation that you handled, and you got through, and you surpassed your expectations. What it does is it will literally trigger at a cellular level memories, the feelings of what it was like, the joy, the confidence. And it will affect your speech. It will affect your tone. It will affect even the subtle body language movements that, that can be read, because it's not so much what we say when we're with people, it's how we say it. It's not so much the words, especially when you're live with people. So that's something, a little homework assignment. I'd love to hear from you. Apply that. That's something in my coaching experience that lately I've had, I'm not thrilled to say, I'm happy to say that we're getting through it, but I've had more people who have these resources, but they get stuck temporarily. And we spend so much time in some of our coaching sessions helping them to turn things around by regaining access. Because what happens is when we get overwhelmed, we go blank. We blank out. We can't remember. In fact, when we get overwhelmed physiologically, there's a complex cascading of chemical changes, I said. And one of the first things to go is cognition, or the ability, the frontal lobes, the ability to think clearly and intelligently and to process and to strategize, etc. This is a way that you don't have to spend a lot of time. It can shift in literally moments, certainly minutes. And the more you work with it, the better it'll get. So again, a moment of excellence as a resource. So what I'm saying is we all have this power of creative imagination. We all have this amazing power. I mean, think about it. Henry Ford wanted a car and everyone to be driving. And he came up with his invention wasn't the car, it was what? That's right, the assembly line. That's really his major contribution, being able to produce en masse automobiles that everybody could afford, not just the extremely wealthy. And you look back in medicine, whether it be the smallpox vaccine, whether it be penicillin, it's fascinating. The Post-it note, I think it was 3M Corp. Someone's working there in the factory. They're throwing their glue away. It wasn't working, and he was playing with it, just messing around. Came up with the idea of a Post-it note. And I invite you to look even currently now in technology. It begins with an idea. So again, when we have a feeling of certainty, we're feeling hopeful, we're feeling optimistic, we're more likely then to trust that and to even allow our mind to think creatively. So let's take a look at some of these keys further in creating certainty. So I mentioned about enhancing the wisdom of the heart. And folks, I just want to very briefly, it's on the screen for you, listen to this. One of the webinars, upcoming webinars that you'll probably wind up having, they'll go into more detail or do a search online, do a Google of it. But again, it's a synchronization of the heart, the brain, and the nervous system, which is equivalent of having more energy, they say, to manifest or to create what we intend. And that's very much in line with what I was saying if you put all those pieces together. It helps us, this coherent alignment helps us to think with more intuition, to come up with ideas, to use our creative imagination. Even helps us to get a more effective connection in a relationship. If I may dare, philosophically, it's been suggested that when we radiate the energy through the lens of the heart, coherence, it's like sunlight radiating through the lens of a magnifying glass. It intensifies it. So as some people like to say, allow me to put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and I invite you to not just listen, but to do this. So let's take a look. I call it the appreciation process. This is key number one, first key of the two keys that I mentioned earlier I wanted to look at. And this is very simple, so be prepared. It's simple, it's even obvious. For over 15 years, it's been a part of my repertoire in my presentations. I always work it now, and it relates, you guessed it, to what's been called the attitude of gratitude for that. It has its basis, though. I like to think of it as enhancing the wisdom of the heart. I'll come back to that. And all it is the appreciation process. If you look at what's in green, I appreciate, thank you. Too often in our lives, we appreciate someone or something when they're no longer available to us. Think about it. People will often spare no expense of time or even money to pay their respects to the family of a dear one who's passed away. And yet when the person was alive, they were a little lax on giving them that attention. In my opinion, one of the greatest gifts that you and I can give to anyone we care about is our attention. At any age. We also know that from a child psychologist's point of view, most behavior problems with children are usually a cry out for attention. And whatever we give attention to, we reinforce. And whatever we reinforce, we give energy to. Whatever we give energy to, we magnify. And too often we find that with our children, with a coworker, with our spouse, with each other, we only hear from each other when we're not happy with something they did. Would you agree? Now, maybe you completely, but you know what I mean. It's a simple little thing. So what I want to ask you to do right now, let's just pause for 30 seconds. Then I want you to do more. The results can be profound. In fact, the HeartMath Institute is actually gathering data. They're actually building a body of evidence based on their data, measuring what I'm talking about philosophically, and measuring how it affects the heart and how it affects the vital systems in the body. And I'll leave that for them because they have all the details, and we don't even have the time for that. And that is, for example, I'll give you an example. I appreciate David and Sherry for trusting me. They don't know me. We've never met before. And they allowed me this opportunity. I appreciate that show of respect and a show of trust. I love doing this. And it's given me a chance to meet you folks and hopefully make a connection. And maybe I can do something for you or steer you in a direction for that. So what I want you to do is let's pause and just think right now to yourself. If you want to close your eyes as long as you're not driving, it doesn't matter. You can write it down. Some people like to write it down and find that very powerful. If you're sitting on hold ever on the phone and you're waiting for someone, just doodle on a piece of paper. I appreciate, and whatever comes to mind, a person or persons, a thing or things, a situation. I appreciate the warming trend here. Last week it was 5 and 7 degrees. Now it's 35, 36. That's dramatically different. It feels like, well, not quite, but relative to that, it feels like spring. Was that someone special in your life? And then always finish with thank you. And the reason why, not to say it out loud, but to just do it internally, to internalize that feeling. And I would guess that if you had one of those sophisticated brain imaging devices that Dr. Newberg at the University of Pennsylvania uses, you'll see a noticeable difference. Certainly you'll feel it. So let me just pause here. And please do this, not just listen, think it. What do you appreciate? Just run through a list in your mind. Relax. Excuse me for interrupting. Please, again, I can't see your faces, and I don't have feedback from you, and it may seem oversimplified. It can be profound. This is another thing, much like the moment of excellence, because I find whenever I do an appreciation list, I find myself thinking, my life is pretty darn good. I'm very fortunate. If I think of my career or a business situation, a relationship, and I do an appreciation list right out, all of a sudden I begin to uncover things genuine. I'm not talking BS, genuine, heartfelt, sincere feelings of appreciation that I didn't realize I felt for someone. It can get you unstuck. Because especially in relationships, the danger is people get stuck because they lose sight of what brought them together. And we have selective memory. And selective memory for a lot of reasons, because of the way that, even the way that we know the way the brain is wired, we tend to focus on problems and danger and things that are a threat. And too often, so we're focusing on what we don't like about the relationship, or about our health, about someone. It's a way to turn it around. It may not change the idiosyncrasies and the challenges, not to ignore that, certainly pay attention, but just the balance. It adds balance. It adds balance to that. So please, folks, this is something. Take it with you. Do it. If you do it at night, it'll help you get to sleep at night. If you do it in bed before you go to sleep, do it in the morning. It'll put a smile on your face for that. Because what it's creating is, again, it's giving you some moments of excellence, evidence, that resource state. The pair program, which is in the middle, if we were in a group, when we're in our groups and we're in an actual seminar, live seminar for that, I would recommend people to pair off with someone you don't know. And it's really fascinating, the emotions and the feelings and things that people come up with. That it's been profound. I've been witness to such wonderful turnarounds for people. And again, I'm just so fortunate and appreciate people, their openness. So this is something you can do with a trusted friend or a trusted ally. It doesn't have to be a stranger, obviously not. If you're in a seminar situation, it's different. But with someone, and just sit down and dialogue. Maybe even close your eyes. The reason why I say close your eyes is because then you tune out the light and you're not as distracted by what may be going on for that. So second one, let's move on. I wish I had even more time with you. This is what the pair programming is relating to, is what I just suggested, is what you could do with a friend. And that is, it's a way to help them. So I hope you like my pictures, and I hope you don't think they're well, whatever for that. I wanted to express it, and I saw this, I just thought it was hysterical for that. Think about it, though. If you're feeling appreciation to someone, what would it take to write them a letter? Not an email. You can do an email if you like, but a letter, or call them on the phone if you can see them. I do this with my own family as often as I can. Write it in their cards when I'm on the phone. It's just amazing. I'm convinced it's enriched the relationships. Oftentimes people have gone into tears. They said, you have no idea how I've been feeling. I had a business man tell me I was at a prayer breakfast meeting. I was giving a presentation, and I was talking about this. And I said, how about when people come into work, let's say you're the supervisor or the business owner, you shook their hand and said, thank you for coming to work. I appreciate it. Somebody asked me, what are you, crazy? What planet are you from? I said, what do you mean? He said, I pay him good money. I'm going to thank him for coming to work. I said, yeah. Well, somebody else stood up and said, you know, I hear what you're saying, because I was on the road visiting a client, sitting in their waiting area, watching for a couple of hours the assistant handle things incredibly. It was clear to me that this woman was really running the show. And I told her, and I complimented her, and she thanked me. And then I felt, he said, Ken, I felt guilty because my own assistant at home has been with me for 15 years, and I can't remember a time that I ever expressed that because she runs the show for me. I made it up my mind. As soon as I got back to the office, and sure enough, he did, I said it to her. I expressed it out loud. She started crying. I said, you have no idea how that makes me feel. I've been going through some tough times the past couple of weeks, and this is wonderful. Thank you. Really, it's a way to express compassion. I think we could all use a little bit more of that feeling. So it's not just meant to be done privately. If it's appropriate and you're comfortable, it's something to do and to actually express for that. And last and not least, key number 2. Again, plug their book, How God Changes Your Brain. In that book, Mark Waldman and Andrew Newberg list 8 exercises for the brain that they've measured, actually can measure, based on their research, help improve the quality of our thinking and help the brain, for longevity, for well-being, etc. And the number 1, I think Mark Waldman may have mentioned it on his webinar. May I mention it again? The number 1 most beneficial exercise you or I or anyone could do to improve the health, quality of life, health of their brain. It's not his famous yawning technique. It's what? Creating feelings of hope and optimism.
Optimism.
Optimism,
Right.
hope and optimism for that.
Right.
As I said earlier, if we lose hope, we lose everything. So just to give you an idea of future self, here's another exercise. Again, if we were in a group, this is one of the dynamic meditations that I was talking about that I authored called Future Self that I do in our seminars. If you're interested, anyone's interested, you can get it on CD. Go to my website, especially the Silver website. You'll find it there. I hope you love it. However, you can also do it on your own. It's a process of simply this. And I was sparked by a term I heard. I was a rare Sunday off. Usually I'm in seminars on Saturdays and Sundays. And I was flipping through the stations, and I saw Reverend Schuler at the Garden Grove Cathedral, and I heard him talk about possibility thinking. I had never watched the show before. I'm not a follower, but that term really stayed with me. And he said, we're hearing a lot of bad news. My sermon today is, let's just create some possibilities. And that's what I want to invite you to do, folks. I know things are not that easy now. We're all facing serious challenges. It's no picnic. And for some, it's even worse and harder than most of us on this call. So this is not to deny that, not to ignore that. It's simply to get unstuck. It's a way to relieve some of the stress. It's a way to release some of those pent-up anxieties. And when you succeed in doing that, I will personally guarantee you will be more likely to think innovatively, come up with ideas and solutions that you didn't before. So that is, you want to sit, and I would recommend put on some quiet, easy classical music or something like that, someplace where you won't be disturbed. Put the answering machine on. Turn your cell phone off. Allow yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes, 20, or if you're in the bath, whatever's convenient and safe for you. Close your eyes. Allow a few deep breaths. If you're a meditator, in your meditation, and just reflect on your ideal future self. Take some situations you're concerned about right now, presently, and imagine positive outcomes. Just exercise it. It may be something you never do. It's like brainstorming. Or maybe it's someone you're concerned about, or your family, or the current situation, and just imagine weeks from now, months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years. It's good to extend it like that. And what you're also doing is, it is a proven process that I've witnessed with thousands and thousands of people to break the chains of resistance to change, because it's a way to desensitize the fear of failure and the fear of success in particular. It's a way to align our vision, with our goals, our intention with our goals. It's a way to mentally rehearse positive outcomes and build a sense of familiarity. If we had more time, we'll go into that. But the basis of this is that whatever's new territory, we tend to resist because we're not sure what to expect. We're a little bit more questioning. We're a little bit more uncertain. We look, we hold back. When we're familiar with someone or something, it's like this. We do business with people we know, like, and trust. We spend time with people we know, like, and trust. Et cetera. So what you're doing is you're kind of hanging out. You're creating an ideal, an image of your future self. So the possibility, just think possibilities. You're working on invention. You want to write a book, or you're working on your health, and you're obviously taking steps. You're seeing your physician, your health caretaker. And what you're doing in addition to that is imagining the possibilities, imagining yourself. If you read Jill Bolte Taylor's book, where she describes, I want to run blank the title, but Stroke of Insight. Unreal. She was able to think back through that, and what she did, she did what some would say was impossible, brought herself back. I've seen her give a presentation. So this stuff really works. Second, it's a way that you can build empathy, prepare for change by what you're kind of mentally rehearsing, you're imagining. If you can visualize it, great. If not, it's just you can think it, just describe it to yourself. And I'll remind you, any word, idea, belief, or value that we focus on for an intense period of time can change the structure and function of your brain. And that's a quote from Born to Believe by Dr. Andrew Newberg. Also, when you do this, when we are in a sense of hope and optimism, we're more likely to have an insight, an idea, a whim, so I call it an intuitive activator for decision-making, for ideas. It's just fascinating to me with that. So please, make the time. This is the second key to help you stay resilient. And also, it's a way, like I said, for prevention, to get into a state of mind where we're building tolerance. That's all. You're just kind of charging yourself. And I can see we're moving on with that. As I look at the time, by the way, we're right there. David, can I take 5 more minutes, or do you think we should just... Still there, Dave?
Still here. Hey, keep going, Ken. This is good. This is going very well. Please take your time. Okay. Well,
group, forgive me. I apologize because there's no clock on my screen here, and it's on the side. I haven't been paying attention. I got on a roll. As you can tell, I love doing this. I get passionate about it. More importantly, I get passionate about thinking what people can do. So let me offer this as a kind of a summary. 5 keys to resilience: to thrive, to maybe turn things around, which relates to what we've been talking about. So what I'm saying is, number 1, take charge of your own mind. Feed it, strengthen it. Read biographies, people you admire. Read success stories. There are countless biographies written by people who have risen from nothing to something, who were raised in the most adverse conditions, have no education. Find biographies like that you resonate with. For it gives you a sense of hope and optimism. Here's a little plug. One of my favorite magazines, Ode, O-D-E. It's published in the Netherlands. I do a lot of business in the Netherlands. In fact, in Rotterdam, where dear friends and colleagues of mine are, in the Silver Organization. And the magazine, it's for intelligent optimists. I love the title. And I tell you, read a newspaper, read Time magazine, read Life, and then read Ode. And Ode is all about not altruism, not about possibilities, about real-world people. They've done stories on democracies. They've done stories on the truth about hydrogen. They've done stories about emerging technologies. The current issue for January, February is about people who are nominated, 25 intelligent optimists, people doing things, incredible things that the mainstream media doesn't give much attention to, who are really making a difference in people's lives and cultures. I read that, I feel hopeful, and I say, God, we got some great people on the planet. Because sometimes I go on the road and I'm driving on the highway and we get caught up in life. It doesn't seem that way. You turn on the news because the media seems to give attention to, forgive me for saying this, what seems like stupid people doing stupid things. They get all the attention. And here are people who are, anyway. So if you don't do it, nobody else will. Even our best friends, even our spouses are not always going to be there for us to support us. I mean, they're there to support us, but it's really up to us. We need to be accountable to ourselves and feed it. Take some seminars. Listen to CD programs. If there's something you gravitate to, something you always wanted to do, it's an investment. It's an investment that pays for itself time and again. Get physical. Feed your body, especially the area of health. It's a sure stress management technique. Going for a walk, a brisk walk even better. Feed your, we are what we eat. Feed your body with as nutrition a program as you possibly can. It's worth taking the time. And that's getting easier now because this has become big industry. This is one of the emerging fields. Nutrition, organic, something. So it's getting easy, even going to the supermarket next door and getting good quality foods. Third, role models. Find role models. So they could be moments of excellence. It's not us, but someone we admire. We learn. You remember your mother telling you, birds of a feather flock together? If you read someone like Dr. Bruce Lipton, he's a biologist. He's a geneticist. He's a cellular biologist. And Dr. Lipton makes a whole thesis, and has for 40 years now, on environment. And we know that the environment. So you and I are who we are in relationship to people we spend time with. Think about it, guys. You and I are who we are in relationship to the people we dominantly spend our time with. That dominant amount of time. Because make no mistake about it, our physical environment has an effect on us. And that has serious implications, doesn't it? If we're truly concerned about the world and making a difference, then we need to address that, because the physical environment, no matter how much you study, no matter how much you read, I've seen it too often. People go through our seminars, they're incredible, they turn their lives around, they go back to the same environment, they're surrounded by negative people, and months later they slip back into old patterns. The psychology of that is because we want to be accepted. So it's important to do things like this with people of like mind, people who share the interest, so that you have that support system built in. That's what's great about these webinars that David and Sherry are putting together for you. I wonder if you realize what a service they're providing. If you're interested in their topics, I mean, they're bringing you information regularly, and it's free. Oh my God, and the membership is so inexpensive for that. These are role models. We need to take action with the proven plan. And this is what I was saying before, is it's not just all in your head. We're mind, we're body, we're spirit. I like to say, if I may, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And we need to take action. So when we have ideas, we need to act on them. We need to maybe nowadays take massive action. If you have a business, any kind of business, if you're not out there marketing and finding new ways, because everything's changing, I'm not going to say what I was thinking, but it's not going to happen. And last, we want to fortify your spirit. The appreciation process, the future self, is a way to to fortify your spirit. Having moments of excellence, studying them, taking their time. If you're a meditator, taking the time, or using relaxation techniques on a daily basis, is a way to that. Another way to fortify your spirit is to be generous to those who are less fortunate. If I may say this, she was not able to go on the call, but my wife, I so admire, and just this holiday she had us, she volunteered our family, and we went to a service, and we gathered food and packaged it, and we went and delivered to people right in the nearby community, so close to us, who have next to nothing. We started donating, furniture, things we're not using, an appliance or electronics and stuff. There are things that we can do. It's a wonderful feeling, and especially now, there are unfortunately, more and more people who could really use it and will appreciate it. And you might just be that little deciding factor to give somebody that little extra oomph they need for that. And what I'd like to say is, one last one. You got to smile at least once a day. So guys, I want to say in closing, I appreciate your patience with me. I know we ran a little bit over. I sincerely hope that you find this of value. I truly believe you will when you follow through and you take some action on some of the suggestions I made. It truly gets better. With that, I'm going to work with it. And even smiling, by the way, they say that it changes on neurochemistry and it's good for the brain, interestingly enough. And I thank it, and I've enjoyed doing this so much, and David and Sherry, I do look forward to doing more. And I wanted to just throw something out there. If you've resonated with what I've been saying, if you gravitate toward it, if you feel we can be of help, I would love to meet you. If you live anywhere near Boston or Seattle or Connecticut, or you don't mind traveling, I offer classes regularly there. You can check our websites that you have, especially the silver website, or the Ken Coscia, where the silver one has a schedule, or perhaps you have family or friends who could benefit from some of these principles, because that's what today really is kind of a sneak preview of what we cover in much more depth, in helping people create more self-reliance. I would also say if you're resonating, with me and to the material, and perhaps, it's not possible or practical to travel to other locations, we do offer coaching services that are available. So my invitation to you is to explore, and I appreciate you, a complimentary coaching session. It's no cost, no obligation. You don't need to do anything more. It's really that simple. The obvious thing is if we are a match, if we are, a fit, and we can be of help, then I'm sure you'll find it's a worthwhile investment. And then we could take it from there and explore something, more that might be. This is our phone number that's there. We'd be happy to do this, about 30 minutes. Can even guide you through some of what we're doing tonight and apply it to something specific. I'd be happy to do that. The websites are there also. If you're interested in any of our CD programs, if you go to both of the websites, especially the silver one, it's got a product page, and there are quite a few things. I mean, they're helpful for review, for reinforcement. I love them. They're helpful. I will, though, admit, though, when you can do it live in your community, if you have instructors or programs you're interested in, that's really where you're going to usually get your best value, because a lot more happens in a live presentation. So pay it forward, guys. If you find this helpful, pay it forward. Help somebody else. Take the time, because, we usually learn better when we teach others. So may I say thank you again. God bless you. I don't know if we're going to go into questions now, because originally we were going to have at least 10, 15 minutes for that. I'm going to leave it. I'm okay with that. I'm going to leave it to your discretion, David, for that.
Okay.
Because I'll say, good night. I think you wanted to then come on in.
Wow. Well, what can I say? Ken, this has been great. I really, really appreciate it. So I'm sure Sherry's prayer pretty much has been answered.
I don't know.
At least one of them.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, we started with a certain number of people, and practically all of them stayed the entire time. That's hard to come by here, especially with our busy schedule. So that's a good testament that you really resonated with people. And folks, I just want to echo what Ken had said. If you feel like, I strongly would encourage you to go to those websites on the page right now and to investigate. One thing for sure is that most people need to know more about how to build strength in their mental and physical aspects, and that's what our presenter has been doing, Ken, for the past 30 plus years. No, I'm sorry, 40 plus years, right, Ken?
Not quite, 38.
38 years.
Actually, I'm going on 39. Not too. God, it flies. It feels like it was yesterday.
Oh, well, you've been having fun. That's why. Great. Okay, well, folks, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box to your right, or the chat box in the blue panel to your right. And Ken, I just wanted to say, I mean, you made a lot of great points while we're waiting for people to type in the questions. You made a lot of great points, and I think one of them that really hit me was the fact that you focus on something, it grows. And I mean, if you focus on the stress or if you focus on the negatives, well, the negatives grow as well. And that is a simple, but oh, how profound. I mean, people say, yeah, we know, but apparently most of us really don't know really how it works out. And I remember when we had Bernie Siegel on the webinar months ago, and he was talking about, he actually corrected me because I was always saying, well, we need to beat cancer, we need to fight cancer and all that. And he corrected me right in front of on the phone and said, well, listen, you've got to, if you focus on cancer, you're giving power to the cancer. You've got to focus on the body's ability to overcome cancer or disease or stress or whatever it is. And that's when you have a better chance of winning. And so I took that correction well. I mean, it's a good point. And so, yes, we need to focus on the good, focus on the positives as much as possible.
I've had the opportunity to share the platform with him. In fact, he lives here in Connecticut, and I had him as a guest to visit with our graduates because we certainly speak the same language, and he's using some of the very modalities. In fact, he was mentored by Dr. Carl Simonton, who's the oncologist who was involved in the Silver program, helping people with cancer, way back in the early 70s. Yeah, so it's very exciting.
Right. Well, we've got a couple inspiring. Thank you so much, Hazel says. Okay, Anna says, how important is spirituality in our day-to-day lives?
Oh, wow. I don't know that I'm qualified to say other than I could give an opinion. I think it's very important. To me, spirituality, now this is just me, is really more about caring, respecting, being kind, being generous. I happen to have been raised a Christian, and it doesn't matter what you're raised, but to me, what's more important than maybe going to church or to synagogue or to temple or what have you is how I treat other people and the level of respect and care. And to me, and now we see that in business, there's a whole movement of what they call now caring capitalism or conscious capitalism. And that's part of what I was alluding to earlier. I mean, it's a serious movement looking at, and there's a company, Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, is a very good example of that, where they're doing all the right things, sustainable futures. They care for their people. They provide services, to help their people grow, and they're profitable.
Yeah. Well, but didn't you say that there's a growing interest now in spirituality in the workplace, and they're calling for spiritual teachers who can help the workers?
Yes. There's a book by Patricia Orberdine, Patricia Orberdine, Megatrends 2010. She wrote the original book with, the name escapes me, Megatrends, and this is kind of a follow-up.
Okay.
And she has, or you could even read a book written some years ago by Michael Lerner called The Politics of Meaning. And he talks a lot about caring capitalism. And, what I find interesting, they say it's not a bad thing. It's just how you focus it. It's the balance. So the question about spirituality, I guess maybe the answer I would offer is, if we lose our soul, if we lose our connection to the bigger plan or the wider picture or the greater good, then I think that's part of what just happened, in the financial markets. I mean, I'm no expert in that, but what I keep hearing from experts is that a lot of it happened because of greedy decisions and strategies, looking at short-term profits rather than the greater good. Be I be so bold to say that on a call, but
well, this is the truth. Sandra says, no question. Just want to say a great webinar. Thanks, Ken. I have taken a couple of the Silver seminars with you, and I am always very pleased.
Oh, thank you, Sandra.
Well, this pretty much covers it for the questions we have tonight. And I think you've
That's great.
Extremely clear. I think next time you come on, Ken, we need to have the video camera on you so we can actually see your expressions. And really, I mean, for what you have to offer, we have to work on trying to get an environment in which people can actually do the exercises along with you, because I think that's when we really get the benefits of this presentation.
I appreciate the feedback because I know in this model, I've been doing this with my students and clients where we do teleconferences together, and I've been actually, excuse me, doing some guided meditations with them on the phone. And but these are people I know and I know their experience, but it's wild because I cannot see their faces, and I really don't like it, frankly. It's not my preferred modality, but it's very practical in that, people like on your webinar, people come from all over. If we picked a location, we'd be very limited who could make it.
Right.
So it has its advantages, and so I'm enjoying exploring the technology and any feedback that you get or people offer, I'd be interested to hear because it'll help me to shape this. I want to fine tune and come up with so like mini presentations like this for an hour, hour and a half that can be practical, can give people value. And then for those people who are interested and want to go farther and deeper into it, great. There's a lot out there.
Right. Absolutely. Well, the good news is you're willing to come back.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, great. Well, I think this wraps it up for tonight. And again, Ken, I want to say a big thank you for being willing to do this.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, folks, have a great weekend, and say good night or good morning or good afternoon, which depending on which part of the world you're in. And God bless. Good night.